Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Joe Theodore, and it's an honor to be here with you today. If you are new to the channel here, if you are new to me, consider sticking around just for a few minutes because I would love for you to consider subscribing to the channel. But I don't want you to subscribe just yet if you don't really vibe with me or if you're not going to dig the conversation today. I want to very much get into the Mars retrograde that is coming in 6 days from now. And yeah, if you're new, just stick around and see if you enjoy anything involving my insights here. And if you'd like to learn anything about myself, just click down below. And yes, and then for anyone who does know me, please consider hitting the like button from now because that really does help the algorithm. And YouTube really needs to give astrology channels more of a boost these days. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that there's so many astrology channels that are so brilliant and no one gets views. It's wild. But I would appreciate if you enjoy my work to help me out, you know? That being said, I hope you guys are well. I hope all is well with you. And this Mars retrograde will be coming in literally less than a week. And for those of you who do know how I roll here, we just kind of unfold a conversation about whatever we're going to talk about, you know? So every Sunday, I seem to be tracking something that's unfolding for the coming week. And I guess before I really begin, if you can give me just like one quick second, I'm going to probably change a little bit of how I do things here because I want to teach more. You know, I want to be able to talk more about just astrology stuff that has nothing to do with like transits all the time. I think I'll always talk about something that goes on during the week in one way, shape, or form. Maybe these Sunday videos will stay the same, but I also want to come on and just randomly post something about me talking and having a conversation. Of course, all the videos here are conversations, right? I want you to kind of pretend like I'm in the room with you as we're just chatting, almost like a little podcast with myself and you. And yeah, I want to be able to riff on other things that can hopefully teach people who don't know what's going on in astrology. Like starting a rising sign series soon. My moon sign series does really well here. And that's the only astrological education I have for the channel. And I noticed those videos get viewed all the time. So I'm going to be taking the channel a little bit in that direction very soon, where I teach more, even just about zodiac signs. So I'm not really sure which one I'm going to do first. So I just want to overview a quick zodiac sign video series or go right into rising signs because I already have moon signs. So we'll see what's going on with that. But just a little heads up for that. But yeah, you know, we're going to go right into the Mars retrograde right now, if I can adjust my seat properly, because that begins in less than a week. It is very, very historic, in my opinion, because we're coming out of a very historic moment in astrology, of course, because Pluto entered Aquarius for forever now. You know, it's not going back into Capricorn, so that era is gone. We literally just had one of the craziest American political moments in recent memory for a lot of generations that are still alive. We have a lot going on geopolitically, and we're dealing with a shift in the world that is very much being mirrored by the outer planets. And the history associated with these outer planets are right on time, my friends. And for those of you who are interested in mundane astrology, I'm sure over time we're going to talk more about the history of these transits and how very much that is tying in to the present moment in many ways. But a lot of what we do here is, of course, more for you, right? To help you in your life to understand astrology more deeply. And yes, referring to examples in the world is absolutely essential to even make things clearer. And that's why I love talking about the world sometimes. And this Mars retrograde, my friends, is one of the many retrogrades of the last, honestly, like 4 months or 4 to 5 months that have really defined where we are now. We can definitely talk politics all day long. I'm not going to. But we have to understand we've been dealing with a Mercury retrograde. We had our last Mercury retrograde in Virgo and Leo, right, in August. Now we're having a Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, so another fire sign. And we now have Mars going retrograde in the early degrees of Leo that will go all the way back through Cancer, pretty much till 17 degrees Cancer. Mars will stay retrograde until February 24th at 17 degrees Cancer. Mars was last at 17 degrees Cancer on October 4th, I believe, or October 5th. So whenever we deal with retrogrades, right, we always look to see where they've come from. How far back did it go? Because essentially Mars has been in pre-shadow since October 5th, if you can believe that. That's one hell of a pre-shadow. And Mars retrogrades for much longer than Mercury. And then Venus is like kind of the second longest, right? And then Mars is the longest personal planet retrograde. And a personal planet, for those of you who are new to astrology, I guess, is Mars, Mercury, or Venus. They make up the dominant energies of our everyday literal experience, right? Mars is the assertive dominant force in our life, the actor, the planet that allows us to engage with the world, right? Which is why it's masculine. Venus is the feminine, the receptor, right? We're talking about pleasure, we're talking about emotional fulfillment, and the feminine. And then Mercury is the mind. So when you think about how the totality of a person really operates every day, excluding the sun and the moon, which are huge for our personalities and just our beingness, it all comes down to Mars, Venus, and Mercury. So when any one of those goes retrograde, it's a big deal. And Venus and Mars don't go retrograde very often. And what's crazy, again, back to this video I recorded in the beginning of the summer on Mars retrograde, because I got so excited about looking ahead at all these retrogrades, but at the same time petrified because I knew how the world was going to be shifting in such a massive way that I was nervous, right? Because I don't know where the world's going to end up based upon the history of the outer planet stuff and the history we are seeing unfold before our eyes in the world, right? I mean, you have half of the world that thinks we're going to rise into the golden era because of one side of the political aisle taking strength, and obviously that kind of swaying of the pendulum is happening around the world. And then you have a lot of people who are completely hopeless and discouraged because they think that's absolutely the wrong direction. So these retrogrades and these outer planets are very much moving differently for everyone, and history is very much being affected by all of this. And when I was looking over the summer towards the future, I knew that these retrogrades were very symbolic for restructuring, reorganizing, and literally that includes our own life in many ways. A lot of us, while these outer planets are shifting, are going through these mini shifts with these personal planet retrogrades that are very much happening back to back to back to back, right? And then Jupiter is retrograde right now as I record this, but Jupiter goes retrograde for a long time every year, of course, we all know that, but it's adding to it. It's just a part of this process. And right now Jupiter's in Gemini. So out of all the signs for Jupiter to be in, we're talking about a very chaotic, mutable air sign. And Jupiter's not comfortable in Gemini, but it's very timely for this particular transit for Jupiter to also be falling in line with Mars going retrograde, with us being in another Mercury retrograde right now while in Sagittarius. And believe it or not, my friends, not to even get too far ahead of myself in this video, because I want to just stick to a couple of things with Mars, and then we'll move on and talk about more of Mars down the line in the next couple of weeks, because I'm sure Mars isn't going away anytime soon, and there's definitely going to be more insights that I want to share. But guys, literally, Mars goes direct February 24th. Within 2 weeks, we have a Venus retrograde, and then we have another Mercury retrograde. So this does not stop. These retrogrades do not stop until, honestly, mid-late spring into the summer. Then we're really not having any real retrograde that could totally affect our life, like in a big, big way, right? Because as we go through the summer, right, Jupiter will enter Cancer, cool. Saturn will be direct with Neptune going into Aries, okay, cool. Like as far as retrograde stories are concerned, we're not dealing with that. Then in the summer, Uranus goes into Gemini, cool. And it's really not until the fall that we see more massive retrogrades. And then, yeah, there might be another Mercury retrograde coming. I don't remember, late summer, probably again or something. But Mars won't go retrograde for another 2 years. Venus only goes retrograde once every year and a half, kind of, right? So we're in the middle of a retrograde storm. And this is incredibly important for us to examine in our own life. This is incredibly important to be examining the Leo part of your life, the Cancer part of your life, right? The Mercury retrograde, this one that we were experiencing right now as I'm recording this, this is an extremely important Mercury retrograde because the new moon in Sagittarius just occurred while Mercury literally just began a retrograde cycle. So Mercury, as I'm recording this right now, has only been retrograde for about 4 or 5 days, I think. And the new moon is actually happening at the moment I'm recording this video. Right now, the new moon is profecting. So the new moon is actually providing, I think, kind of some insight for a lot of us that can help us through the Mercury retrograde moment. So again, whenever you're watching this, you may have already dealt with your Mercury retrograde Sagittarius story, but this is a real big one because again, the new moon is going to be assisting this Mercury retrograde moment for you, right? Wherever Sagittarius is in. Then Mercury will be having a cazimi within a week or so. Within a week, with the sun, of course. A cazimi is when a planet conjoins the sun. And I think this retrograde cycle is going to be very insightful because whatever the issue is trying to be worked out for you, or whatever the problems are, or whatever the mental contemplations are, right? This is going to be very enlightening for the Sagittarius part of your life. So I feel like all of these retrogrades are affecting different parts of our life, trying to kind of like clean something up and restructure something so we can like move on and like really start 2025 into the summer of 2025 with some clarity, right? And whatever that clarity is unique to you. I know for 100% all of my retrograde stories right now. Everything is super clear. Every day that goes by, every week that goes by, I'm learning more and more about the Sagittarius part of my life, the Leo part of my life, the Cancer part of my life. I learned a lot during the Mercury retrograde in Leo over the past summer. And I haven't really looked that far ahead yet. But again, everything that I'm looking at very much tells a story of things that I am working through, that I am actively trying to solve. Leo very much involved in how I approach a role in my life in a very passionate way. It has a lot to do with my career, actually, because the 10th house for me is Leo. And when I look at the retrograde cycle for any planet, really, we're talking about rest, review, and preparation. We're talking about restructuring, right? And depending on the planet, like I just said before, Mercury is the mind. So again, decision-making is always my Mercury story. It always involves decisions. Someone I know close to me always has an encounter from their past. That's just the way it falls for them. And whatever house topic theme of life, it's just the way that they're built. They always have someone come back from their past when it comes to Mercury. And it always involves like someone wanting to get together, or phone calls, or email me, or blah, blah, blah. And Mars is not like that. Mars is more involved with what actions did you take throughout the pre-shadow phase, for example, right? Mars was at 17 degrees Cancer in October 5th, right? So for everything you've done from October 5th till now, or when the retrograde, until now, when it goes retrograde in a couple days from now, everything you've done will be in review, will be brought into the spotlight potentially. And I believe that Mars retrogrades are all about strengthening or restructuring, right? So Mars is all about strength. Leo is all about strength. And Cancer is emotional. So Mars in Cancer is almost like acting from emotion, right? So Mars in Cancer doesn't always it's not really the greatest place for Mars, because Mars really can't be as assertive from a place of, passion than it can in like a fire sign. Like Mars will always love a fire sign. So when we're talking about the Cancer part of your life, we're talking about what did you go through emotionally speaking that really was passionate, as much as passion can come from a deep emotional space. So we're going to backtrack over where Mars was tracking over the last 2 months and kind of be put to the test on whether something needs to be restructured, or is something going to slowly be strengthening, right? So for anyone who began any projects, any relationships, or anything that was slowly being built, this is a moment where whatever those relationships are, whatever those projects are, whatever you were involved with in the Cancer part of your life, Mars retrograde is going to allow for further improvement, right? Things are going to get slower, but not in a bad way for many of us. And yeah, some things will be halted. Some things might be stalled. Some things may be just stopped, but that doesn't mean they go away. It just means there's moments, there's a time period where there needs to be attention given to it, right? And sometimes we need to step back and allow that to kind of fall into place on its own, whatever the issues are or whatever we're dealing with, right? And like I said, if you created a new partnership with a business associate, it doesn't mean that they're just going to detach from you. It just means like this is going to be a time where, okay, you're working on the project, like you're working on what needs to be built, right? And things are going to need to get restructured, and maybe tossed over to the side, maybe thrown out completely. And then you're going to have to continue to strengthen your relationship with your business partner. And then before you know it, when Mars goes direct again, you guys will be off and running. Things will be moving so much smoother. So to me, Mars retrogrades are things that were moving very, 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 very forward are, yes, moving backwards, but not necessarily really moving backwards. It's just the strengthening or the restructuring. And that's how I view Mars retrogrades, to be honest. There's a strengthening and a restructuring, and sometimes you can't move forward like you used to because there's this moment of restructuring and strengthening that needs to be dealt with first. And by the end of the Mars retrograde transit, you totally have a sense of what you're dealing with. You totally have a sense of the relationship you built with this business associate. You totally know if this project that you're taking on is worth the work, continuing working on it, right? And at a lot of the times when we respect the process of what a Mars retrograde wants to do, right? Which essentially is strengthen and restructure if need be. Otherwise, we just sort of things just can't move forward 1,000 miles an hour, or they can't move forward as aggressively as Mars would like to, generally speaking. And we're dealing with a Mars retrograde that's going to be in Cancer too. So we are talking about, emotional regulation, being able to handle whatever's going to go on in that part of your life with maybe not so much emotion, to kind of keep our emotions stoic and making sure that we're acting from a place of emotional regularity and not irregularity. And then when it goes direct again and heads back towards Leo, we'll be moving forward and experiencing new versions of what we kind of might have already been dealing with since October. And then we move ahead into the spring, right? While Mars makes its way back through Leo, all the way through Leo, pretty much till the beginning of the summer, my friends. I think in the beginning of June, Mars finally gets out of Leo. So we're dealing with the Leo Cancer story with Mars for a long time. But the retrograde story really is only up until 6 degrees Leo, right? So when Mars gets back to 6 degrees Leo, it'll be, end of March, I believe, into April-ish. Maybe a little bit further along than that. So we're dealing with a while, you know, of backtracking, strengthening, restructuring, moving forward again and building, taking action, and continuing on with whatever reality unfolds for you in the Mars story. And then once it gets beyond 6 degrees, we're talking about a whole new way of operating in Leo for new karma to be accumulated, for new karmas to be experienced, right? So Leo is really only getting a taste of Mars right now before it goes retrograde. Imagine when it has to go direct again and go out past 20 something extra degrees that Mars has not even touched yet. So that's really what the spring is going to be all about. And like I said in the beginning of the video, we're going to have a Mercury and Venus retrograde literally when mid-March into late March happens, right? So the retrograde stories do not stop for the personal planets in our life. We are going through metamorphosis and change and restructuring and reviewing in a lot of different areas of our life, you know? So we're going to talk so much more about all of this because it really is profound how many personal planet retrogrades are happening all at once, aside from Mercury, because Mercury always goes retrograde. But to have Mars and then Venus go retrograde literally a couple of weeks after Mars goes direct, and Mars will still be in an integration phase for a long time, there's a lot going on all at once. And in the world, I can only imagine what may unfold here. So I really can't wrap my head around all of it right now. The world's really been bumming me out and stressing me out. And that doesn't mean like I'm upset one way or another with what happened in America or something. It's just, there's so much going on. Like, it's overwhelming. And I help people all the time in readings, and it's like keeping track with the world is just like incredible. So I can't even think about Venus going retrograde, or I can't think about another Mercury retrograde down the line. But what I know is that this is the beginning of yet again another historic moment in astrology, because we just finally began the new age of Pluto in Aquarius. This is the first massive shift of all 3 outer planets changing signs within a year and a half of itself. Again, Neptune going into Aries in the spring, Uranus going into Gemini in the summer, then them both retrograding back to where they are through the fall into the winter. And then by, February, March 2026, all the outer planets are in new signs. And this is rare for all of this to go down within like a 15-month period, right? And we're having all these major retrogrades, right, that are affecting our life. So all of us are being tossed around, shifted into new parts of our life that are taking on new meaning in a very big way, right? These outer planets that shift, we only get so many outer planet shifts in our lifetime. Pluto only transits 5 zodiac signs in your entire life if you're lucky. Neptune only transits maybe 5, 6, 7-ish, not all 12. You do not get all 12 Neptune transits in your lifetime. It's very rare. You'd have to live well beyond 100, I think. So, and Uranus is every 80 years it transits the zodiac. So unless you're planning on living till 80, which some of us may, we only get so many of those transits. So when they all shift signs, that means we are karmically put into our soul contract to experience only certain house topics, themes of life that we're meant to go through, from like a karmic perspective. So the fact that we're all experiencing like a major change, all happening in different themes of life for us, it's no wonder the world is losing its mind. It's no wonder we're all going through such a metamorphosis of consciousness. And some of us are devolving into old forms of consciousness, which is why the world is at battle with each other, which is why politics are so crazy, because a new world is always trying to be born, but an old world is just constantly fighting against, the progressiveness, I guess you can say. And don't take that word like some, leftist terminology. I'm just saying we're either progressing or we're regressing. We're either moving forward and doing new things, or we are sticking with what always worked, and some would argue has always failed, right? So when you take a middle path approach, you can see both arguments and realize that really all life is moments of little progressions and big setbacks, and then little progressions again, big setbacks, and then hopefully humans evolve. I mean, that's the plan, and that's always been the story. And that's really what retrogrades do for us too. They give us a moment of something going on in our life, and they kind of throw a wrench into it, or they throw a person come back and someone comes back into our life, right? And the Mercury retrograde has to make a decision. Do I want to call them? Do I want to even reconnect? Or with a Venus retrograde, maybe something from your past that you had a very emotional connection with, or something like that, comes back to you, right? And you get fucking thrown through an emotional loop. So, and then Mars retrogrades, again, we're talking about things you took action on. Things you've been taking action on since October 5th are now going to come back maybe into the spotlight, and there's going to be a moment of strengthening or restructuring. And it's necessary in order for optimization in whatever it was that this Mars transit is fated you with, right? So that's all, my friends. I feel like I'm rambling on now. I hope that this video helped you, resonated with you. We're going to continue talking about Mars retrograde for some time, don't you worry. And I hope this little preview before it happens was helpful. So that being said, my friends, thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you stay to the end, and I'll see you all soon.